Welcome back to News Dose, everybody. We haven't got any big news today, but regardless, we all know that Xbox had a tremendous 2023. We had a shadow drop of Hi-Fi Rush, which is an amazing game. We also had the Activision deal finally going through and completing. On top of that, we had Starfield, which sold really well, although it is being review bombed at the moment for some reason. And we also had Forza. But again, we will get into this later. In addition to this, could Xbox be teasing an announcement of a future Gears game? Well, it's uncertain at the moment, but we will talk about that later. And finally, the numbers are out for the most covered games and the most covered companies for 2023. And surprise, surprise, it's Starfield. We'll also get into that later. All right, let's get this episode started. First up, we have the official numbers for the most covered games and the most covered companies of 2023. Now, as I said, Starfield takes the top spot with 53,000 articles. And if we take a look at the top 10 here for the most covered games, we've got Starfield, Diablo 4, and Minecraft. It just goes to show how big and how recognizable these IPs are, and it's one of the reasons that Xbox went ahead and purchased these companies. Now, we know Starfield is a brand new IP from Bethesda in over 25 years, so it already has that sort of traction going for it with the name Bethesda, but it was also equally painted as Xbox's sort of, for a lack of a better word, important game of 2023, because it will finally get the ball rolling of what Xbox wants to achieve with their big games dropping into Game Pass every 3 months. But regardless, again, it just shows how much Xbox and how much Starfield is talked about. If these metrics tell us one thing, is that Xbox is finally becoming the powerhouse it should have been after the 360 generation. It's becoming important to the video game industry. Microsoft is pushing AI forward. They're pushing subscription forward. They are changing how we consume our products, and they are changing the industry as a whole. And this is going to have a wider impact on its competitors, and it's going to force them to be more creative, to think outside the box, to offer value, and to compete better. Speaking of Starfield, we finally have the best of 2023 for Steam. And there are 7 categories: top sellers, new releases, most played, early access, Steam Deck, controller, VR. Now, Starfield isn't an early access title and it doesn't have any VR features, so it cannot be applied to those categories. But the other 5 categories, it is in the platinum top position for every single one. It is one of the year's top games measured by gross revenue, one of the year's top new releases measured by gross revenue, one of the year's most played games measured by peak concurrent players, one of the year's most played games on Steam Deck measured by daily active players, and one of the year's most played games measured by daily active controller players. Now, a lot of people say that Game Pass isn't sustainable, Game Pass isn't profitable, Game Pass cannibalizes sales, and yet we see that Starfield is in the top groups of games for all of the categories that it's in. How is it selling this much if Game Pass exists? If an alternative that is cheaper to consume the product exists, why is it still selling so much? There's also a narrative that Xbox players do not buy their games, and yet look where we are. A lot of gamers have bought Starfield on the Xbox, and a lot of gamers have bought Starfield on the PC, especially Steam. But it's not just Starfield. Forza Horizon is on there. Sea of Thieves is on there. Grounded is also on there. And it just goes to show how much Microsoft is trying to change the industry, to go away from archaic metrics like console sales. What good is a console sale if you're not selling your software? Console sales are sold at a loss anyway. And again, if these articles and these metrics and these sales are anything to go off of, and if it shows us anything, it's that Xbox is becoming more and more important in the gaming industry. speaking of the video game industry, the news journalists do one thing consistently year after year, every single time, and it is creating these articles that places major importance and creates high expectations from Xbox's exclusives. Video Games Chronicle says that Hellblade 2 could be Xbox's most important exclusive, and to me this is unfair because the most important exclusive before this was Starfield, and the most important exclusive before that was Halo Infinite. After Hellblade, the most important exclusive could be Gears of War, and then it could be Fable. Like, the games are important, sure, I agree. It's not the games itself that's important, it's the consistency of the games. Microsoft and Xbox wants to release big AAA blockbusters that are critically acclaimed, that have high sales every 3 months, and they want to substitute smaller games in between those months. But the important thing here, as I've said and I'm going to reiterate, is consistency. We want them to consistently deliver. The last good Xbox game I played was Hi-Fi Rush. The last good game before that was, gosh, I don't even remember. It was Sunset Overdrive. That was years apart. The one before that was Halo 3, Lost Odyssey. These have like 8+ years in between them. I want Xbox to be able to compete, and the way they can do this is to be consistent. It's unfair for these journalists to place high importance and high expectations on these games, because at the end of the day, if they flop, it's just gonna hit that much harder. I'm not saying Hellblade will flop. I think it looks stunning. It's one of my most anticipated games, along with Fable and South of Midnight. But again, it just creates this unfair expectation that it's the only game that's going to save Xbox. It's the only thing that will save the Xbox brand, when it's just not true. Moving on here, is Xbox bringing Gears of War 6 in 2024? Now, we know that the official Gears of War account on Twitter tweeted Happy Holidays, Gears of War with a picture. And this was very friendly, as they do, as every other company does, when it's the lead up to Christmas, especially on Christmas as well, or Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. But the peculiar part here, or the interesting part, is that Benjamin, the level designer at the Coalition for the Gears of War games, replied with "See you in 2024, #GearsFam." Now, it does look innocent on the surface and not much going on, but if we do dig deeper, as a lot of the community has, and start speculating, it could mean that Gears of War 6 could be coming in 2024, or at least some form of announcement or a trailer. Now, we know the Coalition was working on a smaller title to sort of display what the Unreal Engine 5 is capable of, but we know that that's been cancelled a few years ago. And the last Gears of War game, Gears of War 5, did release in 2019, and the average development time for video games used to be around 3 years, but it's jumped up to about 5, and we are approaching that 5-year period. So it could be a Gears of War announcement, most likely. I'm not going to say it's going to be a release of Gears 6 in 2024, but there's another rumor that happens every single year. It comes from Special Nick from the Xbox Era podcast, and that is a Gears of War collection. Now, the collection did pop up again a few months ago, I believe. So could it be a Gears of War collection in the same vein as a Master Chief collection, where you get all the Gears games and you're able to play all of their campaigns alongside all their multiplayers in one game launcher? The peculiar part here is that a lot of the community is speculating that if this was a joke, Benjamin would have come out and said it's a joke, or he didn't intend to mislead, or that it was just a innocent tweet where he's just looking forward to the next year with the community as well as his friends and colleagues at the Coalition. But he hasn't done this. Granted, it is Christmas holidays. He's probably spending time with his family and not going on Twitter. But the fact that he hasn't come out and said he didn't intend to mislead, or it was a joke, just further proves that it could be true. And we know that back in the day, a lot of people said that all Xbox has is Gears, Forza, and Halo. And that sort of implies that Gears is a staple to the Xbox exclusives. it is a powerhouse to Xbox. And so this could be huge in 2024 if it is true, or at least some form of announcement. We know that 2024 is already packed. We know we're getting Aura, we're getting Towerborn, we're getting Avowed, we are getting Hellblade 2. And if the Australian age rating board classifications are any indication, they only rate games that are 6 months out. So we could also be getting Clockwork Revolution as well as South of Midnight. 2024 is already packed, so I believe it is. If it is any Gears of War related thing, it'll probably be an announcement. But right now, take it with a huge grain of salt. I just think he was just looking forward to 2024 with his colleagues. Speaking of speculation and rumors, apparently Sony might be building a secret studio made up of talented people from Deviation Games. Now, according to Zubitech on Twitter, a lot of the developers from Deviation Games is now migrated to Sony Interactive Entertainment. As we know, Sony Interactive Entertainment is made up of a lot of studios that are in-house. Now, this could mean two things. One, as I've mentioned, they are building a secret studio. Or two, these people have migrated to other studios within Sony Interactive Entertainment. I don't think it's very likely that they've set up a brand new studio, considering there have been plenty of layoffs this year at Sony. If any of the Insomniac hacks and leaks are true, Sony is planning on letting go about 70 to 90 people from Insomniac. So it would be a pretty crappy move to let go of 70 to 90 people, but at the same time open up a brand new studio within Sony and then hire people from Deviation Games and not from Insomniac themselves. What's most likely happening here is that a lot of people were let go from Deviation Games. There were, like I said, a lot of layoffs in Sony recently over the last year or so. So because of this, they probably took a lot of these talented developers and incorporated them into PlayStation's in-house studios. I believe it's either Haven or Firewalk, or it could be both. We know Deviation Games was working on a live service game, and PlayStation is pushing this live service agenda, so it only makes sense to have these creative, talented, committed people be in PlayStation Studios themselves to be able to offer up their experience and their knowledge without having to rely on Bungie mostly by themselves. But that is the news for today, everyone. Leave your comments down below. What do you think about Sony creating a brand new studio? Do you think it's wise? Do they need it? And what do you think about Gears of War 6? Do you think we will see it in 2024? At least an announcement trailer. As per usual, if you've enjoyed the episode, click that bell button to stay updated on when I next upload.